Mother Earth. And the lifeblood of Mother Earth is the Nibi, the water.
So with the water walk here that we have in our own community, it's to bring awareness, to that it's everybody's fight. It's everybody's fight to have good, clean water within our own community. And, with that, what better gift is that is to share our story with everybody.
Water is
Water is our life.
Water is life.
Is life.
Water is our lifeblood. We can't live without it.
Water is life, and I think too many of us forget about it.
I am out to get some clean water from the spring. My grandmother used to tell us, go get us that, go get me that. Go get me that. Bring some clean water with you on your way in.
Think of a time when you've just stopped and you've appreciated water, whether you were thirsty and you drank water, or if you stopped to enjoy a beautiful view on the ocean or the stream or maybe a lake. We all appreciate water. It's something that we've always had, and it's something that needs to be preserved for our future generations.
Water is protected by the Kwe, or the women, because they also have been gifted with that gift to give life, not like me as a nini or a man.
We're not even born yet. When you're conceived, you start being in water. That's how important the water is. Binabo. Binagame.
So if the water is getting hurt, we're getting hurt too. We can change the way we interact with our relations. We can choose to heal. We can choose to do better.
That was our role, to take care of Mother Earth. And the lifeblood of Mother Earth is the Nibi, the water.
So with the water walk here that we have in our own community, is to bring awareness, to that it's everybody's fight. It's everybody's fight to have good, clean water within our own community. And with that, what better gift is that is to share our story with everybody.
Water is
Water is our life.
Water is life.
Is life.
Water is life. Water is our lifeblood. We can't live without it.
Water is life, and I think too many of us forget about it.
Anishinaabekweg I am out to go get some clean water from the spring. You know, my grandmother used to tell us, go get us that, go get me that. Go get me that. Bring some clean water with you on the way in.
Think of a time when you've just stopped and you've appreciated water. Whether you were thirsty and you drank water, or if you stopped to enjoy a beautiful view on the ocean, or a stream, or maybe a lake. We all appreciate water. It's something that we've always had, and it's something that needs to be preserved for the future generations.
Water is protected by the Kwe or the women, because they also have been gifted with that gift to give life, not like me as a nini or a man.
We're not even born yet. When you're conceived, you start being in water. That's how important the water is.
So if the water is getting hurt, we're getting hurt too. We can change the way we interact with our relations. We can choose to heal. We can choose to do better.
That was our role, to take care of Mother Earth. And the lifeblood of Mother Earth is the Nibi, the water.
So the water walk here that we have in our own community is to bring awareness, to that it's everybody's fight. It's everybody's fight to have good clean water within our own community. And with that, what better gift is that, is to share our story with everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Anin, Buju, Chimagwich, and thank you so much to everyone for joining us for tonight's panel as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. To begin, we'd like to acknowledge that many of us are attending the webinar from the homelands of the Anishinaabe. These lands encompass much of the Great Lakes Basin, where webs of interconnected relationships guide the actions of all, including plants and animals. Recently, I've come to understand these place-based relationships and the knowledge they convey as practices. Mohawk scholar Christopher Jocks has said, quote, "Knowledge requires a network of knowers, or more accurately, of actors. Knowledge is something you do, not a pre-existing tool independent of the person holding it, nor of the uses to which it might be put. And this is why we're here, to share knowledge that will inform our actions. I'm hopeful that tonight is the beginning of us doing something to rebuild our own relationships to the places where we live and work." So my name is Emily Shaw. I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Civil and Environmental and Geospatial Engineering at Michigan Tech, and I'll be the event moderator with my co-host, Dr. Val Gagnon. Val?
Ani, everyone. And I'm so glad you're all here to share this evening with us and to learn from all of these panelists, the women. And I am with the College of Forest Resources and Environmental Science, as well as the Great Lakes Research Center at Michigan Tech. And I just wanted to share that this year, October 11th, Indigenous Peoples Day, is especially significant. 2021 is the year that our nation's capital passed a resolution to change the holiday to Indigenous Peoples Day. So we're a part of many places, many universities and schools and cities and states across the country that are observing this new commemoration. And 2021 is also the year that worldwide Indigenous peoples are drawing our attention to the 6th assessment on climate change. And in this assessment, the United Nations calls this moment that we're in right now a code red for our Earth. We are drawing attention to code red as part of this panel and our events in Upper Michigan to draw attention to code red, to also emphasize Indigenous peoples' rights and responsibilities to participate in climate policy with other governments. And to learn more about the significance of Indigenous Peoples Day in 2021, I'll share a couple of links in the chat for everyone in just a moment. So welcome.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick notes before Val introduces our panelists and we begin. The first is that we are recording this panel. So the whole webinar is, it's already begun recording. And after the event, we will add captions and make that recording available to everyone. Second, this is a webinar format, and so only the moderators and panelists have access to a microphone. Everyone else is automatically muted. We welcome you to type questions in the chat or Q&A as they come to you, and we'll address them throughout the panel. Remember to allow the chat to go to panelists and attendees, not just the panelists, so that others can see your questions. I'd also like to ask everyone when submitting questions, please be respectful and kind, and keep in mind the emotional labor you're asking of our panelists. We don't intend to discourage questions. We simply encourage your thoughtfulness. And finally, to practice the chat feature, we're asking everyone to just give a quick intro in the chat, what your name is, where you're listening from. And if you just happen to cross this link to the webinar, go ahead and put your email address in there so that we can make sure you get a recording of the chat of the webinar.
Thanks, Emily. So tonight we are joined by 3 Anishinaabekweg guests who will share with us their stories and experiences related to water, climate justice, and also celebrating land and life. We'll be listening to Anishinaabekweg Doreen Blaker, Katy Bresette, and Kathy Smith. They are water walkers and protectors of Nibi, water. Doreen Blaker, she is a resident in Berga, Michigan, and a member of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community. Doreen is a tribal council member and serves on the tribe's cultural committee. She lives and works in Keweenaw Bay and is a mother of 5 children and grandmother to 8 grandchildren. Kathleen Smith is a tribally enrolled member of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, also located in Berga, Michigan. She is an advocate for Nibi and co-facilitates the KBIC Water Walk and People of the Heart Water Walk using Anishinaabe protocol. On the professional level, she has a new position, Ganawangdong Manuman, which means she who takes care of the wild rice with the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. In her current work, she works with member tribes to protect and enhance our gift from the Creator, Manuman. And finally, Katy Bresette. Katy is a Loon Clan member of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, hailing from the Apostle Islands of northern Wisconsin. raised in Madison, Wisconsin, educated in Duluth, Minnesota, and currently residing in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Mankun Saban was her father, and she is known as Spring. However, her English name is Katy Bresette. Katy is a trained educator in Ojibwe language and culture education with an additional major in secondary broad field social studies. She's currently seeking a graduate degree in environmental and energy policy at Michigan Tech. Katy lives with her partner, Jerry Gendreau, with their children, where their family is exploring how to return to the land to revitalize a traditional clean food culture, a reciprocal and healthy relationship with the land, and to rebuild grateful communities centered around Anishinaabe foods and medicines. So now we'd like to invite each of our panelists to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves and speak to some of the ways your work and daily lives center on and promote climate justice, water protection, and celebrating Indigenous land, water, and life. So we will start with Doreen, and then Kathy, and then Katy. Doreen?
Bonjour, Nibi Good evening. I'm honored to be speaking. Miigwech for the invite, and I am happy to see everybody who stopped their busy lives to take time to be a part of this gathering we're having here. My name is Doreen Blaker. As I said, my most important things I put out there, and that was my children and my grandchildren. And why would that be? Because we've been born on this earth, and our goal is to make this place the same, if not better, for our future generations. So for me, when children are born, it's a sign to me that, you know, we're going to survive as a species, because as humans, we're just part of this earth. We're a species also. We intermingle amongst the swimmers, the crawlers, the winged ones, the four-legged. You know, we're probably the most pitiful of all species on this earth, because we rely on everything else. We rely on them. We rely on the air. We rely on the water. We rely on the plants, the trees. If we were to leave as a species, this place would go along just fine, if not survive. So we kind of have a different kind of way of thinking when it comes to capitalism, that as stewards of the earth, that we are the superior creatures, but we've been taught that we actually rely on everything else for us to survive. And that's something that within our tribal community, our leadership, that's how we think. Actions that are taken, you know, within our community, within our tribal networking, you know, that's the way we think. That's why sometimes when I'm listening to Kathy was mentioning the wolf hunt, I was just cringing because we're tied to the wolf. And it's groups like WIFLIC and, you know, our tribes that, you know, will make awareness that, you know, they're necessary. We need them. They're our brother. And sometimes you got to go up against some mighty big personalities and corporations, but that's what we've been taught. Our goal, if we succeed at our goals, we'll never know, because if our generations are here 150 years from now, we'll know we've done our duty. We'll long been gone, and we'll be those ancestors that the future talks about. So as we talk about our ancestors and our teachings that come from them, I always think to myself, wow, they did their duties without having, you know, books, without, you know, they survived in a world that had a written language that was all out to annihilate us. But yet here we are, because they had those teachings that you take only what you need. You respect what's on the earth. What you're doing is for future generations. And they, you know, to hunt, fish, and gather. And those treaty rights to hunt, fish, and gather that they wanted for their future generations is why we're here today. And we emphasize that. And kind of going off of, that's kind of when I look at a leadership perspective, that's kind of when I introduce myself, that's the perspective that we come from. And that's just I guess that's just a part of my everyday thinking, my everyday way of life. And we look to reconnect to a lot of our traditional ways that were taken away from us. So we're looking to rebuild and reconnect to our old ways in a world where we actually enjoy our modern conveniences also. So how do we bring balance without desecrating and destroying all these species and resources that we depend upon? So I think I'll stop right there. It's just, those were actually my thoughts. It wasn't, you know, if I talk about what I do while I work at my tribe, I've always worked at my tribe. I've been taught by some pretty strong women and men, and they instilled good work ethics, good values in me. So I'm very grateful to almost all the lessons I had to learn my whole entire life. And I look forward to teaching younger ones. I think that's kind of where I'm heading to now, even though I feel young, I'm not. And I think those are new goals that I look at. And one of the goals is to instill the respect for the earth, the water, and we need to preserve it. And it's actually a big worry that I have. And I just hope that we can, persevere that. We will continue that. We're going to make it. And 150 years from now, they're going to talk about what wise ancestors we were. So, miigwech, meo.
Miigwech, Doreen. I also encourage you, Doreen, Kathy, and Katie to be welcome to turn your video on. Kathy?
Abuju, Waso no de que in Jinakaz, Maingen indo dam, Anishinaabekweg Doreen Blaker Dung in Dunjaba. As you know, my name is Kathleen Smith. I'm from KBIC. I'm an advocate for the water. So as I was thinking, and Doreen did such a beautiful job, how can I follow up with that? And she really speaks from the heart, as Anishinaabekweg, that's what we all do. We speak from the heart. And as we do this work together and we sit here and we have this fine balance, I cannot add much more to what Doreen has spoken about, because she has a wonderful way of, bringing things together. But as I have come into this space, it gets me thinking, what is our legacy? What are we going to do to uphold and to do this work, especially with climate change coming about? And so when I was out west, I could only wish that I could be a part of our culture, part of our traditions, as I was kind of living that life of, the Jaganash way. And, from the West, I was a wildland firefighter. And to have that balance of wondering who I was and where I come from, I started my journey back home. And as I made my journey back home, my story can go, on and on, but to go from fire and now advocating for the water. So I came home and started working for my tribe and started learning our culture and traditions. And I can also speak along with and piggyback Doreen and talk about the youth. That's where it's going to start, and how we could do our part, to walk in reciprocity, with Mother Earth, Mama Aki, and to have that beautiful, precious gift that was given to us, from the Creator, our medicines, as Nibi is medicine. And, to be able to speak for those that cannot speak for themselves and to give the voice to our medicines, that's where we have to begin, to step up and do our part. And so my journey back home, it really, really gets you thinking, even now in this space, with the pandemic and with COVID, and, we still continue on with our ceremony. So this is what we do each day. I carry myself as if I'm in ceremony, And that's what I teach the young ones. So I had the opportunity to sit even with the youth this year. We had 16 youth that I worked with, and to be able to teach them, you know, even about Monoman, about, you know, the Meshkiki, our native plants, and most of all, the water, our precious Nibi, on how that is, you know, the blood of Mother Earth, and how we go forth and walk upon this earth. We must walk lightly. So that's how I teach them. We must walk lightly, because we have this impact that we can give to our young ones, you know. So we carry on this legacy from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and, you know, so we bring forth of what we learned from them. And also what we do today will carry on, you know, to our children, our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren. So what we do is we must remember that way, you know, because it actually has an effect through 7 generations. And it comes back to our precious resources that we have. And I'd rather not call them resources. I always have to catch myself and rather call them as gifts, you know, because that's what we have, you know, from Mama Aki, because without that and without the sustenance that she gives us, it just, I kind of cringe, you know, when we were talking about Mayangan early on. That's my clan. And, you know, so what happens to Mayangan happens to us. And so we must go forth, you know, with that, and thinking about how we can pass on our legacy and how we can do our part, you know, for our communities, and to do this work together as we be able to, you know, to speak for our precious Nibi, you know, and what wonderful way of bringing our community together, especially on this panel, you know, to get to the space and to be able to share, you know, even with Tribal Water Day, how you guys put together the song and how we all spoke, you know, about that precious Nibi. It's for everyone. And so I kind of want to just, you know, say that much, and miigwech for having me. It's a pleasure to walk by your side and to advocate and to speak and to, you know, do this work together for Indigenous Peoples Day. And miigwech for having me again, and meet you.
Miigwech. Katy?
Bonjour, can you hear me good? Okay. Bonjour, mangin do tay Miss Kobe Kangan Dunjaba. Makunta Banyan Baba Anishinaabe when the Kazo Baninsa Zigonique and Dishnakas. That ma when Jabayan Misa Oma Yamwe opit in Dagwak the McQueen to make when Jabayang. Okina we Oma Anishinaabe King. When Jabayang the Thomasing Niniso Taman a Kinageko Oma Nibi Kong. Meg one and the Wabanda Meg Ginua. Oma Anishinaabekweg King Gishbin Abba de Tui Gishbin Nisidot to make it on the bee. Mesa Oma Mege Asianisodot to make Ge Asia Baba I gay Engi Wind Mage Mavajako Gishbin Gekandaman I want to Schnabemo and Geda Abba de Tun Geda we do Kua Kina Awia Geabe da Ojabwemo to what Gawin Geabe and Nujago yeah Gawin Nibo we are Oda budget to now one or Anishinaabe or Jabwemwen. Gishbin our budget too young, Gishbin McQueen the monk, Gishbin noon the make good noon the monk or Anishinaabe one. Migi Asianisodot among Megwa Baba young Oma. Misa Og Wenje our budget too young or Anishinaabe one Gishbin Gakandaman Gishbin Gashketuyan. Galing da siya kinaaw nisiro sinawan gayabe me sa o jaganashmona gaye giwi widu kage giwi widu kununam gaye nisiro temego. So hello, you guys got all of my bio info right just a little bit ago. My name is Katy Bresette, Zigonique is what they call me, and as how the spirits know me. I'm a Loon Clan member from the Red Cliff Band, just like I was sharing with everyone. But I'm really grateful and honored to be living here in the Keweenaw Bay now with my partner and these wonderful women here that you all see are good to hear from today. I was just sharing with you, I was really blessed to be given some time to learn Ojibwe before I came here. And so in using that language, it's really important. What I was telling all of you, and I'm not really great at like direct translating. I use my words as best I can in Ojibwe and I try to remember as much as I can in English. So I won't like be directly translating what I said. But one of what I was trying to kind of get across with the words that I was using was that, you know, as Anishinaabekweg people, we were taught, you know, use our words as much as we can. If you have the words, if you know them in Ojibwe, use them, you know, use as much as you possibly can, begin to normalize it, begin to help people hear it again, right? The more we use it, the more people will become comfortable in it. And so that's part of why I try to speak a bit before I use the English terms. But what I was actually saying in there too was this idea that as Anishinaabekweg people, we are, the way I was taught from my father was, it's very important for you to know where you come from, right? And it was reiterated to me by another teacher that a long time ago when we introduced ourselves, you would tell where you're from, right? Because where you come from and who your people are and what clan you are and all those things will speak to the community and tell people not only what words are coming out of your mouth, but all the things that came before you to give you those words, to allow you to say those words out there and to give you that space. And so a long time ago, it would have been just enough for me to tell you my clan and where I'm from and my parents and my family, my background, you know, Ojibwe, and that would be just enough because that would give you all the cues that you needed, right? As a teacher, that's how we try to, you know, scaffold for our students and teach everybody, you know, here's the things that you need in order to have the background information. All that used to be available, and it's just not really in the same way anymore. And so for me, it's really important to describe to you a little bit of the fact that like a Loon clan member, you know, I'm a sister clan to Doreen there, right? Who's from that crane clan, those speaking clans, those birds that you can hear all the time, right? We're water birds, we're water beings in that way too, right? So that comes from that space. Learning how to, you know, big old loon like me, I can't waddle on the land very well, right? But watch me swim and that's where you'll see me. Also knowing that, you know, where Red Cliff is really important to describe that to you all. I'm from this same water space, right? Like the lands here and the trees here and the soils here and how it looks here. It's very similar to where I'm from because it's an exact, it's like 150 degrees north latitude, right? Like it's just right across the bay here. And we're right there too. Red Cliff's 151, we're 1 degree further north. And, in Red Cliff, I was raised on the islands in the Apostle Island areas, on the water, on the shorelines, in the cliffs, with the fish, and so much of that has influenced, you know, the kind of person that I am and the knowledge that I've been gifted and the words even that I'm saying to you, right? Like how water is so important, and to add with that space, so. I am very grateful to be called a water walker. I haven't walked for a very, very long time. I was a very little girl when I did my first water walks. We walked long before, back when Grandma Josephine was still walking. My family, my father, my community would do these water walks, and I was very little, just tiny. And I haven't had as many opportunities, having gone away and come back home. These two women here are very powerful water walkers who are carrying that water for this community over and over and over again. Every time you see that water ceremony occurring here, you see them here, and they're bringing that back in that space. And so if you think about it, as women, we are the ones who walk in water constantly. I have my newest one here. We have a little brand new boy that just came in our life, my new son, and he's only just almost 6 weeks old tomorrow. And I walked in water for the last 10 months, right? Just carrying that water and carrying him and carrying that space. And you hear that in that beginning intro, like how important that is. As women, we constantly are walking in that water and walking in that space. But as Anishinaabe women, we're taught it a little differently, I think, sometimes. And all of that introduction that you got from Kathy and from Doreen, they're telling you a story as just as much as I'm explaining the story. They're telling you a story with those spaces, with those words, even about those spaces. And what I was kind of sharing a little bit in that introduction is as Anishinaabe people, we never used to name like just the land. We always we traveled by water. We lived on the water. You wonder why all these like big cities are where they are, the Duluth area, the Marquette area, Ashland, Keweenaw up in the Copper Harbor, all these places that are associated with geographically for the Chimokumanag or for the folks who have come here who are not from this place. Those were all settlements and places where people lived a long time ago. And if you look, it was for the water, right? And we didn't use it in the same way as Anishinaabe people. We used that water to travel. We were there for the food. We lived on those same places. We didn't fill in our swamps or you know, build big dams to stop the water up, right? We learned to live with that water. But by learning about these places, if you learn about where the places are, think about where all the communities are now. Where did we reserve those places? Where did we maintain ourselves, right? The Keweenaw, the Red Cliff community, these are just the two who are represented here. But if you look at Lakudere, literally the lake of the short ears, right? Meo Mao Dawas, Aga Igining, Acta Flambeau, there's over in LVD, right at Waters Meet there, right? Waters Meet, there's everywhere you go. If you look as Anishinaabe people, you will find that the people stayed with their waters, and those were the most important and vital places. And it wasn't just for transportation, it wasn't just for food, just for medicine, but our understanding of this place is by water. And so you can read our old maps. We had maps. We wrote many things. There's a big mythology about us being, you know, these people who don't write. But that's not true, right? Like we wrote so many things down. And when you see those descriptions, our brains can't see them because we read maps by land formations now. But as Anishinaabe people, you'll see these lines and you'll see these things, and they're rivers, they're waterways, and that you can map all the way through how people traveled, where they went, where the communities were, how the families were. And so I wanted to share that here in this introduction space to help enlighten or help people see a little bit better, to think outside of maybe here and to think a little in here and think with some of these and think about what that means. Think about what it means to be from the Keweenaw community, not just I'm from the Keweenaw. What does it look like? You drive past there, you got to get to come through that way to come up to Houghton at least once or twice. I mean, you got to go to Marquette, you're going to drive past through that way too, right? What does that look like to you? Where does that space come? And learning to see this place, the way that Anishinaabe women are taught is to see from the water. And so I'll stop with that. And because like Kathy had said, you know, Doreen kind of said a lot of what those other questions are, and we'll kind of move from there. But miigwech apajay for the opportunity to speak, and I'll stay on mute, but I might have to take my video off. I got a little boy eating here, so.
Miigwech, everybody. Thank you for giving us a deeper introduction to you all. For tonight's panel, just a little bit of how the night will go. We have a set of questions that we'll pose one at a time. Some panelists will address each question, but not all panelists have to speak to everyone. The three of you are welcome to just speak to the questions that you want to speak to. At any time during the webinar, audience members can type questions into the chat or into the Q&A, and we'll address them periodically throughout the panel. We may not get to all audience questions, but we'll address as much of the question content as we can. So for the first question, could you share more about what it means to be a water walker, and why is this important?
Do you want us to go in the same order that we did, or?
Oh, it doesn't have to. Whomever feels called to speak, go, and others will just follow fall in where they see themselves.
Okay. Well, I'll take first this time, Kathy. You're up to bat next time on the first question. And Katie can take the third one. So what does it mean to be a water walker? I think that I'm one of thousands that could be considered a water walker. I walk in the steps of my ancestors. Issues concerning indigenous cultures have been going on for centuries. In today's world, they call it protesting, but we call it preserving a way of life. It never seems in the world of colonialism that we're actually acknowledged unless we are bringing awareness to things, challenging them in court. That's how our treaties are recognized. You know, water walker is, it's a great thing. It feels good to stop what I'm doing and just acknowledge that water, to come together with other men and women and walk around that very peaceful area. I think it's an honor to be a water walker. And Kathy?
Anishinaabekweg Doreen. So a water walker is a way of, you know, becoming part of something. And it's using Anishinaabe protocol, which is, you know, ceremony. And as we walk upon this earth, like I had said previously, it's just a way of bringing communities together to bring awareness to our most precious gift, Nibi. And I used to remember, like I said, living out west, and it would come upon my Facebook page once in a while of this water walk. And it actually came from 4 directions of Turtle Island here, North America. They came from the east, the west, the north, and the south. And Bidasage, who's a grandmother from my lodge, Grandmother Josephine, she's the one that had started the water walk movement. And I'm sure that there's other Anishinaabe that have done ceremonies, that have, you know, advocated for the water previously before the water walk movement had started. But Grandmother Josephine, you know, was the one, the catalyst that actually started the movement. And she happened to be from our lodge. And so as I sat out west, I only wished that I could be a part of that movement. And as I transitioned home, I got to meet Bidasage and finally join her, you know, using the Anishinaabe protocol to advocate for the water. And so she even came through our community, Kuna Bay Indian community, a few times. You know, she also did the walk from through the St. Lawrence River from the Atlantic Ocean and ended up in Katie's neck of the woods, the Apostle Islands, Madeline Island. And so, you know, it's an important way of coming together, you know, as a community and bringing that awareness, you know, and waving at vehicles because it's along the highways that we use, you know, our protocol. And people do stop and say, what are you doing? Even on our People of the Heart Water Walk, you know, a lot of people thought we were doing a parade. And so we had to explain to them, you know, what the water walk movement is about. And so we do have a pamphlet for the People of the Heart Water Walk, which Michigan Tech had helped us put together. And so we have that to hand out, you know, to find a way for them to be able to, if that spirit calls to them, to advocate with us, to walk by our side. And so as we go forth, you know, we have to give that voice to our precious Nibi, as she cannot speak for herself, and to live that good life, you know, but was win Nibi, you know. So we must do it for the water. So there's also a saying that we always say, you know, for that precious Nibi, Nibi, I shall do this for the water. And so, you know, with my journey that comes to be, you know, the water walk, we also must have that balance of the masculine and the feminine. So we must ask our Niniwo to walk by our side, because it's not only work for the Kwe, but it's also for the Anini, the men. And so we did put a call out, you know, for the men to join us on this particular water walk, because we only had a core walkers last year, and most of them were female. And so we had maybe 2 the first day, and my son, one of my sons was a part of it. But we had one Anini that actually almost walked the full 79 miles. And so we must remember that, you know, we have to have that fine balance, and to do this work together, and to bring our communities together to advocate for our most precious gift. So that's what it means to me, as a way of ceremony, a way of bringing together fellowship, a way of sharing our feasts and doing that together. So I just have that much to say. Meet you.
I think the only thing I'd really just kind of add to that is this idea of being a water walker is just, it reminds me of the agreements we all made as people so long ago, our agreements to carry our responsibilities. And when you watch these women walking, they're literally carrying their responsibility with them, and they're reinvigorating that relationship that they have to this place. And so I think that's what I'm reminded of when I see that physical embodiment of the agreements that we made to carry and carry on, and to continue walking forward regardless of kind of how hard it might be or how many other things we have to do. And we're going to keep doing this work on and on and on. And that's all I would add to that. Yeah.
Miigwech. So moving on to our second question. Many Indigenous peoples are on the forefront of climate-related changes worldwide, from extreme weather events such as heat waves and droughts, flooding, storm surges, extreme rainfall, wildfires, reduced snowfall, and diminishing sea ice. Events such as these also affect larger social relationships. Could you each share what kind of climate-related changes you are experiencing in your communities?
Well, in our own community at KBIC, I think it's throughout the whole region. We'll look at the smoke, the drift smoke that we get from out west. You know, that's a major change. Last year, I think we smelled it maybe a couple times, but this year, you know, there's a drought going on. We had less precipitation this year. And even with the water levels that kind of dropped, you know, in our own community, the wild rice beds, you know, were impacted. So we had high water levels for the last few years. And then this year they were pretty low. So sometimes it can, you know, really affect our precious monomen in that way. Even transitioning over to Gliffwick, we get these stories about monomen. And so as the water level drops, even where we get the green seed for our restoration project for KBIC, they had a hard time getting it this year. So we got a lot less green seed for our wild rice restoration. The rice was abundant this year, but access was an issue. So I could speak, you know, from a regional point of view, they were becoming innovative to try to get to the rice, to where they actually put like a snowshoe, like a piece of plywood on each foot, and tried to walk out there and get the rice. There's been stories where, you know, Jerry John Drew, Katy's partner, had went out. And then I also talked to our one of our vendors, and he was saying people were getting stuck out there because they had that determination to get out there to get that precious monomen, because that's one of our feast foods. And that's sometimes it's our way of sustaining our life also, not only for sustenance. So this year they had to switch it up and just go for sustenance before they can actually, you know, turn it around and, you know, to be able to sell it to other communities. So with that, you know, climate change is here. It's here right now, to where it's really affecting our precious gifts. We have invasive species that come into the area. The emerald ash borer is actually in our space up there at Kuna Bay right now for our black ash trees. You know, so even though that each invasive species does have, you know, their purpose here, because I won't speak against our non-native relatives too, because they do serve a purpose. But there's other things that are coming about, you know, with other invasives that can have an effect on our other medicines, the maple and the birch, with the Asian longhorn beetle. We know that it's, you know, south of us right now, but, you know, with climate change, is it going to get cold enough? Is it going to get cold enough to kill off those invasives, you know, that are talking about coming in and compromising our precious resources, our mashkiki, our beautiful gifts? So climate change is here. We even have the spotted wing Dropsophilia that's actually in our berries right now, and it comes from California. It's here in our space at Kuna Bay. So that's what I could speak about, you know, and I could go on. I sat with the medicines last year for about 2 months. We had a frost, you know, in June, and it really took out a lot of our blueberries. We didn't have blueberries this year. I didn't have any apples in my apple orchard for 2 years in a row because we had that late frost. And then with our native plant restoration down at Sandpoint in Berga, we had to sit with our medicines and actually put water on it this year, 2 years in a row, because we had a time that really heated up. And this year it went a lot longer. But I could give other people the opportunity to speak. But, you know, with that experience, it's a regional thing. And it's, you know, affecting everybody. Even with our prophecy, there's going to be a food shortage that's coming. And so what is that going to be, you know, for us as Anishinaabe people, and how we're going to sustain our life by returning back to the land and taking care of our earth? Miigwech.
I don't know, Doreen, if you had anything to jump in on. I can kind of reiterate what Kathy is talking about. The work that we're doing here up on Dynamite Hill has been greatly impacted because everything we're doing is having to do with the land now these days. And so, you know, our sugar season was completely different this year, where it started around the same time, but we were getting really high highs and really low lows. And so the up and downs, the fluctuations that normally we don't see those kinds of fluctuations. It's always that nice steady grade. And that's why sugar season is such a beautiful season around up here. But we're getting really hot, warm days and really, really cold nights. And so the production in the maple was completely affected by it. Like Kathy was talking about Menumen, the rice season was really difficult on so many people this year. And it wasn't because there wasn't rice, it was because it was so difficult to get to the rice. People who had spent years gathering up this rice, doing this all this year, would just get enough for their families and say, that's all I can get this year. I can't go out there anymore. It's too much. I think the effects of those kinds of things really right now are what I think maybe sometimes we think about the direct implications, right? About the fact that the food that is being impacted and the medicines and whatnot. But I think sometimes we forget to remember our reactions to it too. So the gut reaction is like, how do I modify, how do I make the environment do what I want, right? Because we are all being taught in this Western mindset of how do I change what is going on out there to make it suit my needs. And so you hear people talking about, you know, how do I go get more, like Kathy was saying, you know, how do I get more rice? Like what are these innovations I can use to get more? It causes us to want to go and produce more. So for us as sugar producers right here, you know, how do we tap more trees? Should we be tapping more trees in the first place is kind of the question. Can we? Do we have to get more equipment for that? Do we have to build up and get more because these seasons are going to be so crazy that we can't actually make enough for not only our own needs, but then the people in the community who need it as well. And so those thoughts, those reactions, I think are very important as people. We think we can control so much, right? Because as humans, we're very human centric, and we think so much about how we can, I'm going to change it, right? I don't need to be uncomfortable when it's 90 degrees. I'll plug my air conditioner in, and then I'll be comfortable and it'll be fine, right? Instead of really starting to think about like, what are the things we're going to have to change? One of the things I've started getting really concerned about is the idea that we're going to be a climate haven. All the people who are wealthy enough to leave California and New York and Florida and all the places where there's going to be such impact, they're coming here, they're going to be coming and spending their time here. And as an Anishinaabekweg, for me, I see that I'm scared. I'm very scared about that. I think about the future repercussions of that, because we already had all of our land taken, right? All the land that was left over, literally our word for a reservation, Ishkwanagan, is like the pieces that were left over. What's going to be the impact on that? Because those people are still coming here. They're the people who are reacting to climate change instead of wanting to change themselves and what they do about themselves and their own impacts on it. They want to come here because now we'll just move here and then it'll be fine. And they don't want to change the way in which they see the water, in which they see the maple, in which they see the berries. And so that mindset is also coming. And just as much as the emerald ash borer is coming, just as much as that longhorn beetle is coming, just as much as the southern trees are coming up this way, everything's coming this way, including those thoughts and that mindset. And so it's a struggle, because why people need to move. You understand the thoughts as the same reason why the emerald ash borer has come here, right? Like it moved for a reason. That they talk about those Asian carps that are swimming up those streams and coming up to the Great Lakes, and those flies that are coming and eating the minan and eating those berries as well. They came here for a reason, the same reason why most of us maybe came here, right? Because there's good food and good water and there's good things here still. And so I think those changes, what I'm seeing is we talk about these immediate changes, and Doreen reminded me of this when she was first talking, when she introduced everything and talked about like seeing in that future and seeing in that longer mindset. That's the part that we get taught in our Anishinaabe point of views, or from our stories and our legends, like Kathy just said, our prophecies. We get taught this mindset that thinks so far ahead. We're expected to think that way, even if we don't even understand it like fully the way we used to so long ago. We think so far ahead, and what I feel right now is the reactions to right now and the loss of the ability to think that farther away. And so for me, it's hard to live in this right here. It's hard for me to think just about this right now, because I got a good garden season because I was able to use my hose, and I grew tomatoes way better than I've ever grown ever before, right? Because I had all these really great, nice, warm days. That's the immediacy of that though, right? And so when we think about what Kathy was explaining about those minan, those blueberries, and the way they suffered, well, why did they suffer that way? Because we would have had a far better blueberry stock across the board if we were able to care for those blueberries in the way that Anishinaabe people are designed to care for blueberries, use their fire and create a better habitat and help them exist as best as they possibly can. We were taught that way. We are taught our responsibility is to help everything else exist as well. That's not the same mindset that a lot of people have. And so, and even in our communities, we're losing that mindset too. We're thinking about how to change everything around us instead of learning how to support all those things around us. And so I think that that's a lot of the climate change experiences that I'm personally feeling as I'm walking through here. Like, yes, I can talk to you about the rice and the maple and all those immediate concerns that we're all seeing. But I think that part of our problem is we're only looking right here and we're not thinking about those farther spaces and longer. These women are a lot of our community members probably are, a lot of folks who are trying to do this work, but we're trying to respond to issues that are already existing instead of really taking the time to understand how much of our impacts are and how far out they already are. It's too late to change whether those animals are coming. They're here. You can't stop that now. I'm sorry. You're going to cut down all the trees. That's not going to change anything. That's making it worse for everybody, you know? So it's that thought process, I think, is one of the things that really is sinking into me more and more recently. How do we think about that part of who we are? I don't know if that even answers the question, but that's where I went with it.
And just to go on with what Kathy and Katy had talked about, you know, when she was talking about the smoke, just kind of brings out old firefighter. I love the smell of smoke, but it is troublesome when we've seen so much, or we smelled so much of it this year. And an unusual thing that I did this summer, which I know, you know, I prayed for rain all the time. Please rain. And that's just something that we never, you know, rain always came. Rain was spring, rain was June. It got warm in July. The rains came back in August and rained a lot in the fall. And we are just, you know, and this isn't just something that, you know, happened this year or the year before. It's been building up and it's been coming, and it's very visible to us now. Weather seems unpredictable. It affects our gathering processes. They talked about the blueberries. Some of the medicines had to be collected at different times, and spearing season was different. Someone in Natural Resources had mentioned, and I didn't quite understand it, and I'll have to get a little bit more on it, but the lake didn't flip. And it's like, what? Well, the lake flips, the colder water comes to the top, and they think that didn't happen this year, you know. So we have some real serious issues that are coming up. And Katie's right, there's a migration coming back to our area. You know, water is a precious gift, and you've seen people migrated away for whatever reasons, but within the next decades, you'll see migrations back towards freshwater resources. So we have to be aware and prepare, as Katy and Kathy have said.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I appreciate that you all went in a little bit of a different direction on that question and then tied everything together. For our next question, I'm wondering if you all can share with us how you envision climate justice.
I'm okay to start this one if you guys are good with that, but one of the things that I've been really feeling and thinking on as of late is, it's hard for me to use English sometimes because these concepts don't always work in the English language. And I know climate justice is a really powerful word, and it incites action and movement. And I think what worries me sometimes about this idea of just this justice is justice for who? Because what's justice for the people who are moving from another place and coming here may be my injustice, right? Because those are going to be fewer spaces where my medicine will be able to grow because you built your house there, right? And because you needed to escape the floods that you were running away from. And I think sometimes that word might not do itself justice in that it almost creates some of that hierarchy sometimes. And we don't think about it that way, right? Because we want to think about justice for all and peace and goodwill and all that, those wonderful, wonderful words. But I think we lose something a little bit. And I'm not exactly sure what it is. Like, I'm not trying to bang on that word or anything, but one of the things that have constantly returned to the forefront of so many of these conversations and a lot of the work that we're trying to do here is the relationship and the responsibility that we have. Because that's really, if you think about justice, the only people who are not doing what they need to do are people, right? Like, and I say people, I mean fish people, tree people, like those are beings, those are existences, they have just as much rights in this place as any of the rest of us do. And we took that from them. We are the ones who are taking it every single day, me too included, right? I'm sitting here with my computer on and my lights going and participating in this, and I'm taking something for me to exist. That's a teaching that we are given when we get our tobacco talks, right? Like you have to always understand, whenever you take something to survive, you are taking it. And so when I think about climate justice and what that actually looks like, it's the repair of those relationships, the repair of our responsibilities and our responsibilities to this place. As an Anishinaabe, as an Ojibwe woman, as an Ojibwe woman specifically from here, I can tell you my story as Zigwanikwe and what I think that those entail, right? And I can talk to Kathy about that and Doreen about that, and they can get it, right? They understand it. They got some of those same teachings. They'll understand me. And maybe I can even talk to you, Emily and Val, and you guys will understand me because you're from this place now too, and you've spent so much time here, and you'll feel that with me. But I don't know if that relationship is still the same for everybody. And I think what has been lost is so many of this, that's a being in relationship. What does it mean to be in relationship with the Emerald Ash Borer? What does that mean to you? Because that space, what tells us, that gives us the right to say, Emerald Ash Borer, I don't want you here, right? That's a really hard thing to say, because I don't want him here. I don't want him taking all those black ashes. I don't want him to come and decimate these places. But something has happened to that being that has caused all of that to come here. And so I really think that repairing those relationships to these places and repairing our responsibilities to what's happening here, that's going to be some of the first steps that we have to take in order to really bring that justice, what we're talking about, forward in that place. That's probably all I have right now.
I think envisioning climate justice is I think that's a kind of a cool word. It's kind of a constant battle that's been going on for quite a while. It's fighting institutionalism, and there's 7 different institutions that society is kind of go by, and one of them is economic. And that's where capitalism comes in. And it's invisible barriers that have promised us all that hard work will bring results. But in fact, it's created working poor and created wider divisions of wealth distribution. And we need to start from the ground up. We can't expect a few politicians to solve our issues. This problem is too big. It's ingrained in our society. So how do we look at that? Well, again, I've heard Kathy talk about the youth, and we need to look at the institution of education. How can we begin to push for change in curriculum so that rather than people thinking they're stewards of the earth, that they understand that, we're a part of this earth. So you begin with the youth on that. As people, we can begin to lobby locally, statewide, federally. We're just a small tribal community, but when we get together with other tribal communities, people begin to pay attention. We're affected by state legislation, federal legislation, and we need to continue to, and this is from a leadership perspective, we need to continue going in. It don't matter if they slam the door on us. And as a leader, I've gotten that when we've gone to Washington. Well, whoop-de-doo, we're still coming back, and people after me will continue to come back. We need to divest, and this was something that was in the No DAPL back in 2016, divest from fossil fuels. How can you do that? How can you, simple things, if I do it, if you do it, One thing that I just do on my own little thing is I never buy nothing from Nestle. I'll check to see if it's Nestle. I love their creamers, but I will not touch one of those creamers now because they're stealing our water. You know, these big companies come in, we're actually not even paying for the water, we're paying for their bottles. But if we begin doing things like that to show these companies that we, you know, change, you guys need to change. We need to create a new way of, you know, economy. How can we, you know, we can stop doing this stuff, but you know, like Katy said, you know, I like my lights, you know, I like heat in the wintertime, you know, but we need to reinvest in clean energy. And it's not easy because laws and regulations have made it too easy for the fossil fuels industry to make us think that we have to have that. And there should, you know, we need to look at cleaner energy. And these are things that we can begin educating youth on. Katy also mentioned land, water, you know, the animals. What about them? You know, we have to bring them back. It was very sad. I can't even remember how many species they said are going extinct this year. And I thought, oh my God, are we just terrible when I heard that on the news. You know, they're going extinct because of, you know, our ways. We have to protect those sacred sites. We have to, which is like water, you know. We need to be freed from capitalism and colonialism. And this is an ongoing battle and will continue, but it'll be people like us that will make the change if, you know, as we gather together. It doesn't, it's not just an Indigenous issue. If you look on the water walk, you see people from all walks of life. I really like that now when I see people come from all over. And that's something that, Kathy and Terry emphasize, you know, we all share that water and everybody's welcome. And it's great to see everybody coming and participating in that. So it's going to be a collaborative effort of just us, you know, people like us. And we all need to gather together from all ends, you know, of the earth and continue. I'm not going to say begin, continue, because this has been a continuous battle as long as I remember this my whole life, actually. And, climate justice, you know, maybe they'll call it something different in the future, but this is just our continuing battle and we're not going to give it up. We live in too beautiful of a place. Mi'o.
To add to Doreen, and I'll just piggyback, you know, from another perspective, you know, because climate change is happening. So what we can do is we can kind of be proactive of it. And there was a time where the tribe actually had a MOU to collect black ash seeds. And that's what they're doing downstate, because I've had a basket weaver actually call me and wanted to kind of do a trade where they would teach me how to do the black ash basket weaving and, you know, for the supplies, because there is hardly any downstate anymore. So what they did is they collected seed, and that's what our tribe has done, is to collect that precious, you know, minutes, which is seed, and put it away for storage for in case something like this does happen. So we could do our part and, you know, start collecting those seeds and let nature run its course, because it does serve a purpose. It actually brings awareness for what is most precious to us, is these beautiful gifts that Mama Aki does give us, even with the water. So we just kind of do our part and to teach those young ones, you know, to even have that voice and to do their own part and advocate for the water. And we could just start by, you know, even just not having plastic, not buying Nestle products, like Doreen was saying. I also do the same thing. I do not buy, you know, from Nestle. I always check, even though I do like their coffee creamers, but I had to turn to something else. And so we could just do little things and to start doing the changes on our own, even with Monoman restoration. So that's what my job is now, is to protect and enhance it, you know, and also to protect treaty rights of off-reservation gathering. And so we can only do our part, you know, by learning from each other and to see what other communities are doing also, because there's, you know, good lessons to learn from what other communities are doing, what other leadership and research, you know, even with Michigan Tech, there's some programs, doing the tribal adaptation management plans, which I'm now starting to speak about climate change and our cultural point of view. So we can even give that voice to, our issues, and to be able to bring our communities together in a good way, because, it's going to be more than just one voice. And if we stand together and to speak about these issues and bring about change, maybe we can do something. But I just wanted to add just that much. Meet you.
Which I appreciate the subtle nudge to pick up on the subtleties of language. It's something you've all talked about in other contexts too. So it's nice to see that pointed out here as we're talking about climate change too. For the next question, you've all spoken to the work you're involved with as a water walker or as an educator, a parent, and in leadership. And I'm wondering, how may others get involved in the kind of work that you're doing, and where, especially thinking as a non-Indigenous person, like where are allies needed in that work? How can we contribute in that way?
I think holding things like this are great ways. Sum of the parts equals the whole. So if you guys are doing this and we all participate and begin supporting, that's where we'll get our strength from. Participating in the water walk. We all share this earth. It isn't just, this person's or, this race or that race. What happens in one area will affect another. So continued awareness, continued support of each other. There's many issues with climate change that bring effects onto different communities, and we all know that our Indigenous, Black, South American society, communities, they all suffer because of capitalism and the effects of making a quick dollar on fossil fuels, for instance, or exploiting gifts or resources, as we call it. So I think it's great that, university allowed the sponsorship of this, and it'd be great to see more kinds of these things. I always like it when we see I do. I like to see when you guys come down, because when I went to school there in 97, there just wasn't a whole heck of a lot of this going on. So to see these partnerships and these collaborations are great. I think awareness is something that, helps out, and talk to your local legislators, your state legislators. It's just helping one another, I guess. We're all human.
And I will add on to what Doreen had said. You could always reach out to your tribal community too. We had a Kwe that actually reached out because they wanted a water ceremony, because of the Father's Day flood that came through the Houghton Hancock area a few years back. And so that's how, the talks of the water walk began, the People of the Heart water walk. And so when you reach out to other communities, to even just simply ask, how do we get involved? And then I also am part of the Wisconsin survey they have for Monoman, because the state of Wisconsin actually has a permitting system down. And then that's how we get a lot of input, to do a lot of research of how many people actually go out and harvest, both tribal and non-tribal, because they have state regulations here where Michigan doesn't. And so some of the comments that are, that were put into some of those surveys from last year was they want to get involved. They want to do restoration. And so that's what it is just have to ask and try to get involved. We've had numerous people actually approach, the Natural Resources Department and want to volunteer. But because of COVID happened, you know, there's sometimes we have to kind of step back for a minute, you know, and do that rest, because that's what I think is kind of going on, you know, with our medicines that are really getting affected, you know, by the heat, by the drought this year. I went down to Sandpoint and was checking some of our Labrador tea, and a lot of those beautiful bushes that we had last year actually kind of shriveled up to almost this bungie just a little bit now. So we have to walk side by side with, you know, the climate change, because as Anishinaabe, we always came about with change. And we had to change our ways, you know, a little bit to kind of live along with, you know, the change also. So maybe some of those medicines weren't meant for us. Maybe we didn't do our job to take care of those medicines. Maybe that's why it's getting taken away from us. Maybe that's why we don't have, you know, our black ash that's, you know, threatened right now. Maybe that's why that matig, that tree, is getting taken away from us, because we didn't take care of that. But it all serves a purpose. It's all connected, you know, and it's all connected by Nibi, our most precious gift. And so I just want to say that much. And I'll let Katy speak.
I think for this question, I think it's important to kind of reiterate what Doreen said a little bit earlier, and then Kathy kind of just said a little bit too about, oh, sorry, my little bear baby's growling. This idea that it's a continuation, that's how Doreen put it, right? And then Kathy kind of said it a little bit too when she talked about the idea of reaching out to the local community, the local tribes nearby. One of the things that needs to be understood, we get called like underrepresented communities all the time, right? Folks are, you know, communities of color, that kind of thing. But what people forget is we're survival communities. We're the ones who made it, right? Like we already went through climate change before, like just like 100+ years ago. Like everything was gone, decimated, and we're still here. And so it's really important to know and understand that in a tribal community, you're looking at entire governments, like governing structures where Kathy's working, where Doreen's working, where folks are putting all this time and energy, that are dedicated to how do we survive this? How do we keep going? What can we do about this? And that's true across this continent, and it's true across this globe. Indigenous communities especially have all been impacted time and time and time again, like these two are just saying, you know, it's down in South America, it's these fossil fuels communities, like this, it's constantly happening. And so we have literal experts and departments dedicated to this work. And so if you think about like what can allies do for it, part of it is, and you know, Jerry and I talk about this a lot, is part of it is, how do you get out of the way? How do you put the importance and the work that's happening for tribal communities? It's already happening right now. They don't have to do more work. There's the things that are in place that are causing that work to be disrupted, or causing that work to having the hoops that they have to jump through. And, you know, there's so many different people who are in positions, especially right now, if we're talking about, we're at the university, right? We're sponsoring this, and we got folks who are graduating or folks who are already in those positions. How do you prioritize the work that's already happening? And not give folks more work to do, like not ask them like, what more can you do to bring this forward? It's what can I do? Whether it be the funding, whether it be making sure there's a pay position for that, right? Like what can you do as someone who's not from these communities, who aren't doing this work already? How can you kind of step back and support this? Another way to really reformulate this for yourself too is kind of what Doreen and Kathy had already said about the youth. How do we change this? The only way to change any sort of policy that's in place is to re-educate like everyone that's already here, or change education for the folks who are coming up, right? And we're still working out of an industrialized education system. That's just the bottom line. Even when we're talking about environmental schools and we're talking about all these other, they're still required based upon standards that are based in industrialization of this country. That's where it is baseline. And so how do you support tribal schools? How do you change your own understanding of, like, maybe it's not for me. I think Katy said this really well, like there's a purpose for it. What if the purpose is to support what's happening in our community so that we can heal and get better and help you along with us? Jerry often says this. He says, you know, so Ojibwe people, we're like the indicator species. If you see what's, like Katy shared this with you, what happens to wolf happens in Anishinaabe, but like what happens in Anishinaabe, like that kind of mentality, we really have to flip that for ourselves and understand as, and I say Anishinaabe in Ojibwe because that word means like indigenous as a whole. But, and so it's like a more general term in my mind. So I'm not just saying like the Ojibwe people, but indigenous folks across the globe, you know, how do you start putting, you want to de-invest from fossil fuels, start reinvesting in our communities anywhere, any place. Look, they'll be somewhere. You can throw your money at it. It's real easy. There's ways to put that in there, but you can put your time, you can put your energy, your expertise. Or what if your expertise is training the next generation of our people because our students don't have access or they didn't learn, or, you know, how do you start really bringing those in? And I think that's a really, like I said earlier, I think what's really important is the longevity of these thoughts. Doreen had explained it too really well, you know, like the longevity of forward, like that forward thinking and that forward motion, but also the longevity of how far back we think. When's the last time you thought back to what decisions were made in 1924? Because I thought about it just about an hour ago. And I will regularly think about the decisions that were made in 1854, right? And on and on and on. I know that there were decisions made for me back in 900, you know, AD, for the fact that those folks came over here in the first place. Those decisions were made at that time, right? And that thought is in my mind regularly. And so I think the longevity of our thoughts, like expanding out and going beyond this reactive space, needs to be really encouraged and supported. And in that way, you'll start to see, again, you know, how do you repair that relationship? How do you put that and invest in those spaces? I think that's maybe how we can kind of reframe that for ourselves. I might have wandered off on that thought, but thank you.
I love it when people, as they're answering a question, drift off and then kind of bring themselves back. So I think it's great. So we're coming to the end. And so I wanted to move to our final question. So we're asking each of you to address this. Why is it important to celebrate Indigenous lands, water, and lives?
Well, I'll just repeat just what I said already. We're the ones who survived. We're the ones who made it. We're the ones who are still here. We're the ones who already survived these circumstances before. And so I don't know about y'all, but I would probably defer to the folks who made it and to the people who keep on going. You know, I think that's a really important mindset to really refrain for yourselves.
I guess I would look back on your, there was a question that says, what can we learn from Indigenous people knowledge, language, and how to respond and how to be better stewards? I think if you look at, Katy has mentioned, Katy's mentioned, we remember where we came from, and by honoring, you know, that these are Indigenous lands, waters, and lives, can also bring you back to, you know, your own ancestors. Everybody has ancestors. You know, it can make you a better steward. You have it, it's written into the Constitution. And that was something that I learned from a visiting professor at Michigan Tech, Walter Bresette. And he emphasized that. He goes, people look to us, he goes, it's written in their own constitution to ourselves and our posterity. You know, there's an obligation already in the US Constitution to the future generations. So when you see that, you know, celebrating and acknowledging Indigenous waters and lands, waters, and lives, well, you know, if you realize that, you know, that's, you know, we honor our ancestors, honor your ancestors. They gave you an obligation also to preserve this land for your posterity. Be good stewards of the land. Acknowledge that being a good steward means you're acknowledging the gifts that God has given you. So, me'o.
And just to add to them, my beautiful sisters here, Katy and Doreen, as they were speaking, it really kind of brought forth of who we are. And to celebrate who we are is that we're starting to heal. We're starting to make our journey on that way of healing, from what kind of happened to our people. Because when our language is taken away, our ways were kind of set forth too. We were distracted. And so as we heal, we're no longer distracted. And to celebrate that, bringing that acknowledgement to our healing and to be able to give our medicines, Mama Aki, the water of a voice, even Maingan, our four-legged relative here. And as we go forth and celebrate, to be able to even just have that voice when it was taken away from us at one time. And to be able to start healing and speaking for our relatives that do not have a voice, and we can speak for them. That's a celebration in itself. As we return back to our lands, we are starting to own up to it. And it's even in our prophecy that, it's going to come to a time to where everyone is going to look upon Anishinaabe people for guidance. And so, what we carry on from our ancestors and what we're learning right now and we're passing on to our children, that's what our legacy is going to be about all of us coming together. And hopefully we will all be able to celebrate in the near future. So I just wanted to say that much. Meet you.
Thank you all so much. Val, did you have any closing comments?
Sure. I just would like to extend my gratitude for each of you and just thinking about all of the different teachings that you shared from your own perspectives and in your own lives, and even thinking generationally as well, how the three of you represent, the spans across generations. And a lot of important things have been said this evening, in thinking backward and forward, and also about what's under our feet. Just want to say miigwech to each of you. And I've heard different stories at different times from each of you. And there's different times in our lives that we need to hear things again. And so I thank you all for sharing that here tonight.
Yeah, agreed. So to our panelists, we're immensely grateful for you spending tonight with us. This was so great. I feel like I just could have curled up and just not moderated anything and just listened. It's been such a joy. To our attendees, thank you for sharing your time and your evening with us. It's our hope that the stories and experiences you listened to tonight will serve as a call to action. The climate is changing, and Nibi is calling for us to act. Recent headlines have announced algal blooms in Lake Superior. Extreme rain events have caused flooding and damaged infrastructure from here to Detroit. But these aren't just news stories. Today, climate change impacts are a part of living as a resident in the Great Lakes Basin, as all of our panelists have mentioned tonight. We've listened and learned this evening from Indigenous knowledge holders who define themselves and their communities by their relationships to the land and the water and with life. To begin rebuilding these relationships for ourselves, we need to relearn how to be good relatives. So this weekend, we hope that you will join us for the People of the Heart Water Walk. The Facebook page will pop up for you as you leave the webinar tonight, or get involved with local groups that are doing advocacy work to curb carbon emissions. Keweenaw Youth for Climate is the one that I'm most familiar with. We look forward to engaging in this good work together. So Chi-miigwech to all of you. Thank you and good night.
Chi-miigwech.
Good job, Jeff.
Which